Welcome to How It Works, a video series from Law Sites and LawNext in which you get to see hands-on demonstrations of legal tech products directly from the developer. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at Prokurio, a financial platform for intellectual property professionals that provides tools for IP cost forecasting, invoice analysis, and budgeting. Joining me today to tell us about Prokurio is the company's Chief Executive Officer, Phil Henderson. Phil, welcome to How It Works. Give us a little introduction to Prokurio.
Thanks, Bob. And first of all, don't tell my team that I'm a developer. They will cringe if they hear that. But so I've been in the IP industry for about 30 years or so. As you can tell, I'm kind of an old guy. And I've been working with a lot of organizations. They've all got IP management systems, which do a great job of managing dates. They've got e-billing systems, which, evaluate and manage outside counsel guidelines and all that kind of stuff. But when I would work with the teams, they're all still using spreadsheets for forecasting. They're manually looking at their maintenance invoices. And when I ask them why, the IP management systems don't have budgeting and forecasting capabilities. They don't have associate costs. The e-billing systems don't have the intellectual property expertise. And so that leaves the teams with lots of manual work and spreadsheets. And so we stepped into the void last year, and we are kind of the one-stop shop for everything IP cost related. We've got an international database of patent and trademark office fees, as well as benchmark associate fees for every IP service and every type of IP. And we'll talk a little bit about our first product we've launched earlier this year, our Invoice review service, and we'll wrap up with a preview of a product that we're about to launch, our forecasting service.
Oh, great. I look forward to seeing it. Why don't you hop on in and show us how it works?
I will. So once you log into Prokurio, the first thing that you'll see is the results of your most recent invoice analysis. We're going to touch on this in a little bit later, and we'll actually upload an invoice and take a look at that. What I want to direct us to first is some of the features that we've developed to help the IP practitioners. There are a couple products on the market right now that will do forecasting, have some limited capabilities, and they view everything through the lens of if you want your information, you have to go do a forecast. And so we're trying to develop a whole series of tools that allow people to get to what they need, as quickly as possible. One of the first things that we've developed is this currency converter tool. When you're working in intellectual property, there is a lot of back and forth around currency. You may see an invoice that's got an amount that's due, and it's in euros or it's in Brazilian currency, Canadian dollars, etc. And so right within the Prokurio platform, you've got access to current and historic exchange rates. So I can convert a euro to US dollar, very quickly see this. I can also go back in time. So if I've got an invoice that was from December of 2022, I can convert that and see what that is like. So it's very easy to convert currency, take a look at exchange rates. And this is a very fundamental piece of our forecasting and our invoice review services, which allows us to go back in time and look at an IP invoice that was from the middle of last year, as well as project forward, costs for all the different jurisdictions. So yeah, that's our exchange rate feature. Any questions?
Well, I assume that currency info is kept up to date, more or less real time?
Yes, we have a real-time integration with a currency service. So everything is real-time, and we cache historic currencies. So we've got everything. I think our currencies go back to 1996.
Great.
So currency is an important part of the application, but it's just a very, very small part. A very important part is the fees that I talked about in the introduction. So as I mentioned, we've got the PTO fees. We've also got associate fees. And this is a really neat feature for organizations that want to look up, what's the fee in France. I'll show you that in just a second. What are the associate costs in Brazil? And so we'll transition over to our fees. And we access that simply by clicking on our country fee screen. As you can see, we've got, all the different countries in the world. We've got some brief information here. We'll take a look at the United States first. That's usually a fairly popular destination. So United States, we'll take a look at it. And as I mentioned, we've collected all of the PTO fees from around the world. So obviously we've got the United States. There are a lot of different types of patents. The US is actually one of the most complicated countries when it comes to fees, but we've got all the different types of application costs. Once your patent is granted, there are costs associated with that. And then once you get your patent, you have to maintain your patent. And there are different fees for different sizes of organizations. We track all of that. So we've got all of that built into the system, so you don't have to worry about that. And the US actually has some even more sophisticated requirements. When you file an application, if it's over a certain number of pages, there's extra fees. And so we've got all of that. And then we've also got all of that for trademarks. So trademark filing, registration, renewal. So anybody who has any questions on PTO fees, whether it's the United States or Brazil or Argentina or Djibouti, all of that is within our database. Now, the United States is a pretty easy example. Most people, know where the United States Patent Office website is. So that's, the bar is not too terribly high there. So let's take a look at something that's maybe a little more complicated. And let's go look up a French fee. So this is France. And so let's say that you're a law firm and your client called you up. They know that they've got a patent. It's really, really old. And with patents, the fees are graduated based on the age of the patent. So a patent that's been in force for 20 years is significantly more expensive than a patent that's only been around for 5 or 6 years. And so law firms are always getting questions around how much is this going to cost? And so client calls you up and says, hey, I've got this 20th year French patent. How much am I going to be paying in a couple of months? So you go into your French country, you can come over to your maintenance tab, you can scroll down, you'll see that the 20th year patent is 800 euros. And using our handy dandy currency converter, I can convert it and I can see that that's going to be $883. If I had any questions on trademarks, same type of thing. So one-stop shop for everything related to PTO fees.
Phil, how often do these fee schedules change, and how quickly after they change do you have the updated fees?
That's a great question. It varies. Generally speaking, about the most frequent for a country is once a year. Although I think there was Argentina had a fee increase beginning of this year and then in March, but that's a little bit unusual. So usually we expect one fee increase a year per jurisdiction. We have a team that does nothing but monitor fee updates, and so we put the fees in each week. And so very seldom is it more than 3 or 4 days from when a fee update is announced, then it goes into the system. Now, most jurisdictions will announce the fee increases, so they'll be, if today is April, the fee increases will be effective May 1 or May 2. And so we put those into the system and we have an effective date. So you can actually see this is the current fee. This is the fee that's going to be effective as of May. So very important to keep those up to date so you've got accurate information.
Yeah, I have to assume a big advantage of this is simply that you have all of this information in one place and nobody has to go hunting all over the internet to find it. Exactly.
Yes. And, it's not just hunting over the internet. If you go to Chile, the fees and everything's in Spanish. So it's, you spend a lot of time with Google Translate, and it can be quite time consuming. And so we can save, organizations hours and hours just trying to find a single fee sometimes. Okay. From here, we're going to go to the invoice analysis feature. Invoice analysis, this is the first feature we launched at the beginning of this year. Really, really important feature for us. You may ask why? Well, the reality is that patent and trademark maintenance providers typically send out an invoice like this. It's not very detailed. There's one item per line. It'll just say Germany tax year 15, amount $1,155. So you don't have details on, the agent fee, the currencies, or anything along those lines. And most organizations, when they look into their contracts, they realize that there's not much visibility into the currency that they get, even through the terms of the contract. And so with our invoice review service, we can actually unpack invoices. We can, unpack a PDF invoice, an Excel file, XML file, a CSV file, and tell you exactly how much you're spending. So we've got some initial setup that we have, with service fees and whatnot that gets set during the onboarding process. Onboarding is typically 24 to 48 hours. We train the system on the invoice. Every client will have slightly different invoices. We will do sample upload here, select our vendor. We'll set the date of the invoice, which allows us to then determine when the currency is going to be based upon. Don't have to select anything else. We select upload. And so we are pulling apart the invoice right now. We're determining the jurisdictions inside the invoice. We're grabbing the currencies from the jurisdictions. We're then looking up the fees that I showed you on the country fee screen so that we can see what fees are due in the various time frames. We're doing all of the exchange rate calculations for the fees. And then we're pulling apart all of the agent fees. So we've got a benchmark database of all the different foreign associates, and we can pull that out of the invoice if it's in the invoice. If not, we'll estimate it. And we can then compare the estimated foreign associate fees or the actual foreign associate fees with our benchmark database. And all of that will then materialize in a dashboard that's going to show up here in about 5 seconds. So we can generally process about $1 million worth of invoices in about 35-40 seconds. And so this is our dashboard. Don't have a lot of time to go into a tremendous amount of detail, but the first row is basics around the invoice. So this is a $1.2 million trademark invoice. There are a lot of countries. Potential savings of about $167,000. You can see that much of it is above market currency costs. So we actually factor in and we allow clients to tune the currency costs. So if they're willing to accept a 3% or a 4% or a 5% exchange rate premium, we can factor all of that in so we're not overestimating their potential savings. We also have agent costs, and so we compared the agent costs for this particular invoice against our benchmark fees and highlight quite a bit of savings. And as I said, we don't have time to go through every bit of the invoice, but we do a deep dive into the currency, the exchange rate at the time of the currency, what they're being charged, and then we highlight in the different jurisdictions where they could have saved money on the various agent fees.
And then what's a company do with this analysis?
So a company typically will go back to their vendor and they will take a look at the contract and they will negotiate with the vendor to get currency thresholds put into the contract. Usually it's around improving the transparency. Sometimes they will get the vendor to commit to providing more details on the invoice on what the actual exchange rate that they used during the invoicing process. So it usually spawns a discussion with the vendor. And then once that discussion takes place, the client will use this as a way to essentially police the vendor to make sure that the vendor is living up to, if the vendor said, we'll decrease your agent fees to this rate, to make sure that they're actually living up to the spirit of what was negotiated.
All right. And as I understand it, you're now going to give us a preview of your upcoming cost forecasting feature.
Exactly. Yeah, we're really excited about this. We're working with some of our early adopters right now. And so I'll do a quick preview of our forecaster. So let's do United States, large entity, and submit. Well, we'll do a long forecast. So using all of the associate fees and the PTO fees that I was describing earlier, we can fill out a little bit of information. It will then go and tell you. So for example, estimated costs are going to be $27,000 and it's made up of associate fees, certain amount of official fees. We've got all the maintenance costs and everything like that so that you can, very easily see, what you're going to be spending. We're working on having this work for international filings. So I start in the United States and then I file around the world. What does that entire family look like? And we've got a whole series of other features that we're developing. So we'll be launching this at the end of this month, and then we'll be having updates that are going to be going on through May and June. And that's it.
Great. I know that one of your company principles is transparency and simplicity around pricing. So how do you price all of this?
So pricing is really straightforward. We've got a flat fixed fee for the invoice review service. It's $12,000 a year, whether you do one invoice or 100 invoices. And then the forecaster is going to be a flat fee of $7,500. So some vendors that have forecasters charge per forecast. We have an unlimited number of forecasts that you can do. So we try to keep it really, really simple.
Great. Any last words before we wrap up?
I think we covered it. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Well, Phil Henderson, Chief Executive Officer of Prokurio, thanks so much for showing us around today. I really appreciate it. Really interesting product, and congratulations on your almost 1-year birthday, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode of How It Works. I'm Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for watching, and a reminder that you can find the full series at LawNext.com.